Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my cell care series. My name is Kim Tran, and this is micro lesson number 4, Norm Setting 101. And today we introduce the concept of front loading and dedicating time ahead of time to save a lot of time later on down the road. So, this saying really does help explain why we set norms in general. We are not a team because we work together. We are a team because we respect, trust, and care for each other. So that's the whole reason why we take time to set norms. One is because we're trying to establish a very comfortable and safe environment to thrive in. And two, we have many differences and we have different ways and characteristics about ourselves. And it's important for us to all get on the same page of what we think is a respectful and safe work environment. So a little humor to start as usual. This picture depicts group dynamics in a sense. We're more similar than we are different, but there are times when our differences are pretty big. Just like this cat and this dog, they couldn't be any more different, but they are working together to accomplish the goal of getting each other some ice cubes, it looks like. But if you take that in a metaphorical sense, the idea is that norms help us either get past our differences or hopefully enhance our strengths so that we can all work together respectfully and safely. So, what is a norm? By definition, norms are a standard or pattern, especially of social behavior that is typical or expected of a group. So, I also included the definition of rules, which is a word that pretty much no one likes, maybe some, maybe a select few, but I wanted to differentiate the difference between norms and rules. Rules are a set of explicit or understood regulations or principles governing conduct within a particular activity or sphere. So rules are seen as I have to do this. Norms are seen as it would be really great if you could follow these expectations. Norms are more positively received and they tend to be more effective. However, the difference is that norms are generally more abstract than rules. Rules are don't do this or do this a certain number of times only, etc. So part of today is helping you learn how to establish effective norms. They're not the same. There's similarities, but I promise you, when you set norms and expectations over specific rules, they're generally more positively received. So why is it important to set norms though? Norms help you create a safe and respectful environment. Because the difference between norms and rules oftentimes is that, for one thing, they are strength based usually, more positively based. It's not norms aren't typically don't do this, don't do that. Norms are what are the positive characteristics that we can all agree to do. Be an active listener, have a growth mindset, as opposed to don't talk when someone else is talking. It just makes the situation more comfortable. Also, it does allow for increased efficiency. It allows the team or the classroom or whatever the group is to have a general understanding of what the expectations are. And also, it allows the opportunity to be able to refer back to them when needed. It creates additional buy-in from the whole group because effective norm setting is when you create the norms with your group. That there's a strategy to that, but as opposed to rules where it's typically the teacher or the administrator or someone setting those rules ahead of time. Norms are typically created during the first session or the first meeting with a specific group. So therefore, when you create it, when you help create it, you typically buy in more. It opens communication lines for the whole group, meaning that everyone has an opportunity to share how they feel about it. They also have the opportunity to agree or disagree on the norms, because as you will see later on, we don't want 50 norms out there. We only want a certain number, a smaller number that we can all agree to. Otherwise, it becomes a list of rules. There's no hard line about how many you can set, but it's typical to have just a few. And as I've already acknowledged, it does paint a clearer picture of what is being asked for the whole group. People, once you set the norms and you agree upon them, they know that they should be active listeners, they should be teammates, or whatever the norms are. And it does allow you to really understand who you're working with. So how do you set a norm? This is the strategy that I will teach you, and I'm always welcome to hear your strategies as well if you'd be willing to share. Step one, it is very important to explain what a norm actually is, the purpose of setting norms, and how norms are different from rules. Sometimes it's also important to help understand why are you taking the time to set norms when nothing has happened yet, which would hopefully be something along the lines of being proactive and really respecting how everyone feels, and understanding that everyone is different and they might be comfortable with some things while some people might not be comfortable with other things. So strategy number 2 is to have an idea of what norms you're hoping to lead your group towards. So you can't just come in and have no expectations for a group. You may want to consider, okay, so I'm hoping one of the norms has to do with being a good listener, or has to do with not calling each other names, etc. But it is also still important to be open to what your group shares as ideas. Sometimes the wording might be a little different than what you were hoping for. So, for example, if someone suggests don't be rude, I mean, that's definitely a great goal. It's a good norm, but it's possible to also put that in a more positive spin, such as, okay, so what you meant by that is be a positive teammate. And more often than not, people will say, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Most people have great ideas, and sometimes they need more guidance on how to make it more positive, but still get the same impact. So strategy 3, have a starter norm ready to share to get the ball rolling. Oftentimes when you're in a group, depending on the size, people are nervous to share, so you may need to have an opener, such as have a growth mindset or try to practice a growth mindset. Something that gets the wheels turning, and then more often than not, the suggestions will flood through. Step 4, or strategy 4, try to keep it strength-based. Positive norms are the most effective, especially if you're trying to create a positive environment. It's counterintuitive to have negative connotation norms such as don't be a jerk, or don't talk, don't be on your phone. All great concepts to understand and follow, but typically if you say something along the lines of be a teammate, have a growth mindset, that encapsulates multiple do not do this, do not do that expectations. And plus, since we're trying to keep norms down to 3 or 4 or 5 at the most, it allows you to put it all together. And like I just said, try to keep the numbers of norms low so that hopefully you have it written in a way that's not too wordy and a little catchy, that people can recite and memorize the norms fairly quickly. But sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Other tips that I would have if you're in a group that's a little trickier to work with as far as um, staying with the norms, people get spirited, and that's okay. And sometimes might need to assign a norm checker, meaning that a specific person is designated that if they notice someone who is not adhering to the norms that they also agreed upon, that they're able to share that. Say, hey, Kim, are you being an active listener? Uh, do you feel like you're having a growth mindset with that statement? Sounds a little harsh, but when you have a norm checker, it typically seems to help people really, really stay on point when it comes to adhering to the norms, which is very important in group dynamics. And then also with that, I know that sounded negative. It's also good to point out when people are following the norms at a high level, such as Erica, I really love the positivity, or Beth, you are really being a really good teammate. Thank you for that. So those are some examples. So here's an example set of norms that I typically use in a group setting. And it's typical that the groups that I'm in do seem to come to these conclusions on their own, but sometimes they need a little guidance. So try to practice a growth mindset, be present, be a teammate, allow everyone to voice their thoughts equitably. In any situation, no matter how dicey a group situation gets, you can usually, whatever's going on can typically fall under one of these four to get people back on track, or at least start the conversation and get everyone back to feeling safe and feeling successful and comfortable in their environment. So I'm going to leave you with this saying. I appreciate you all. Norms they seem so obvious. Sometimes they feel like, oh, we're in such a rush right now and we just don't have time to set norms. But I promise you, by putting 3 to 5 minutes worth of time at the beginning to set these norms, you will have a more comfortable work setting. It's just group dynamics. There's a lot of research that goes into it that we could look into if you needed more proof. But from my experience, and I'm guessing from most of yours experiences, being able to understand what's expected of you is helpful, because no matter how awesome we all are, which you all are, sometimes it's good to have an idea of what everyone else is hoping for as well. Anyways, I'm Kim Tran. Feedback is always appreciated, and take care. You're all doing a great job.